How to embrace the lessons of reflective thinking. If you are like most people in our culture today, you probably do very little reflective thinking. If that's the case, it may be holding you back more than you think. Take to heart the following suggestions to increase your ability to think reflectively. 1. Set aside time for reflection. Greek philosopher Socrates observed, "The unexamined life is not worth living." For most people, however, reflection and self-examination doesn't come naturally. It can be a fairly uncomfortable activity for a variety of reasons. They have a hard time staying focused. They find the process dull. Or they don't like spending a lot of time thinking about emotionally difficult issues. But if you don't carve out the time for it, you are unlikely to do any reflective thinking. 2. Remove yourself from distractions. As much as any other kind of thinking, reflection requires solitude. Distraction and reflection simply don't mix. It's not the kind of thing you can do well near a television, in a cubicle, while the phone is ringing, or with children in the same room. One of the reasons I've been able to accomplish much and keep growing personally is that I've not only set aside time to reflect, but I've separated myself from distractions for short blocks of time, 30 minutes in the spa, an hour outside on a rock in my backyard, or a few hours in a comfortable chair in my office. The place doesn't matter, as long as you remove yourself from distractions and interruptions. 3. Regularly review your calendar or journal. Most people use their calendar as a planning tool, which it is. But few people use it as a reflective thinking tool. What could be better, however, for helping you to review where you have been and what you have done, except maybe a journal? I'm not a journaler in the regular sense. I don't use writing to figure out what I'm thinking and feeling. Instead, I figure out what I'm thinking and feeling, and then I write down significant thoughts and action points. I file the thoughts so that I can quickly put my hands on them again. I immediately execute the action points or delegate them to someone else. Calendars and journals remind you of how you've spent your time, show you whether your activities match your priorities, and help you see whether you are making progress. They also offer you an opportunity to recall activities that you might not have had the time to reflect on previously. Some of the most valuable thoughts you've ever had may have been lost because you didn't give yourself the reflection time you needed. 4. Ask the right questions. The value you receive from reflecting will depend on the kinds of questions you ask yourself. The better the questions, the more gold you will mine from your thinking. When I reflect, I think in terms of my values, relationships, and experiences. Here are some sample questions. Personal growth. What have I learned today that will help me grow? How can I apply it to my life? When should I apply it? Adding value. To whom did I add value today? How do I know I added value to that person? Can I follow up and compound the positive benefit he or she received? Leadership. Did I lead by example today? Did I lift my people and organization to a higher level? What did I do and how did I do it? Personal faith. Did I represent God well today? Did I practice the golden rule? Have I walked the second mile with someone? Marriage and family. Did I communicate love to my family today? How did I show that love? Did they feel it? Did they return it? Inner circle. Have I spent enough time with my key players? What can I do to help them be more successful? In what areas can I mentor them? Discoveries. What did I encounter today to which I need to give more thinking time? Are there lessons to be learned? Are there things to be done? How you organize your reflection time is up to you. You may want to adapt my pattern to your own values. Or you can try a system that my friend Dick Biggs uses. He creates 3 columns on a sheet of paper. Year, turning point, impact. This system is good for reflecting on the bigger picture. Dick used it to see patterns in his life, such as when he moved to Atlanta and was encouraged by a new teacher to write. You could just as easily write event, significance, and action point on a page to help you benefit from reflective thinking. The main thing is to create questions that work for you, and write down any significant thoughts that come to you during the reflection time. 5. Cement your learning through action. Writing down the good thoughts that come out of your reflective thinking has value, but nothing helps you to grow like putting your thoughts into action. To do that, you must be intentional. When you read a good book, for example, there are always good thoughts, quotes, or lessons that you can take away from it and use yourself. I always mark the takeaways in a book and then reread them when I'm done with the book. When I listen to a message, I record the takeaways so that I can file them for future use. When I go to a seminar, I take good notes, and I use a system of symbols to cue me to do certain things. An arrow like this right-pointing arrow means to look at this material again. An asterisk like this asterisk next to a marked section means to file it according to the subject noted. A bracket like this means that I want to use what's marked in a lecture or book. An arrow like this left-pointing arrow means this idea will take off if I work at it. When most people go to a conference or seminar, they enjoy the experience, listen to the speakers, and sometimes even take notes. But nothing happens after they go home. They like many of the concepts they hear, but when they close their notebooks, they don't think about them again. When that happens, they receive little more than a temporary surge of motivation. When you go to a conference, revisit what you heard, reflect on it, and then put it into action. It can change your life. Ultimately, reflective thinking has three main values. It gives me perspective within context. It allows me to continually connect with my journey. And it provides counsel and direction concerning my future. It is an invaluable tool to my personal growth. Few things in life can help me learn and improve the way reflective thinking can. Thinking question. Am I regularly revisiting the past to gain a true perspective and think with understanding? 8. Question popular thinking. I'm not an answering machine, I'm a questioning machine. If we have all the answers, how come we are in such a mess? Douglas Cardinal. Economist John Maynard Keynes, whose ideas profoundly influenced economic theory and practices in the 20th century, asserted, the difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from the old ones. Going against popular thinking can be difficult, whether you are a businessperson bucking company tradition, a pastor introducing new types of music to his church, a new mother rejecting old wives' tales handed down from her parents, or a teenager ignoring currently popular styles. Many of the ideas in this book go against popular thinking. If you value popularity over good thinking, then you will severely limit your potential to learn the types of thinking encouraged by this book. Popular thinking is too average to understand the value of good thinking. Too inflexible to realize the impact of changed thinking. Too lazy to master the process of intentional thinking. Too small to see the wisdom of big picture thinking. Too satisfied to unleash the potential of focused thinking. Too traditional to discover the joy of creative thinking. Too naive to recognize the importance of realistic thinking. Too undisciplined to release the power of strategic thinking. Too limiting to feel the energy of possibility thinking. Too trendy to embrace the lessons of reflective thinking. Too shallow to question the acceptance of popular thinking. Too proud to encourage the participation of shared thinking. Too self-absorbed to experience the satisfaction of unselfish thinking, and too uncommitted to enjoy the return of bottom-line thinking. If you want to become a good thinker, then start preparing yourself for the possibility of becoming unpopular. Why you should question the acceptance of popular thinking. I've given you some broad reasons for questioning the acceptance of popular thinking. Now allow me to be more specific. 1. Popular thinking sometimes means not thinking. My friend Kevin Myers sums up the idea of popular thinking by saying, "The problem with popular thinking is that it doesn't require you to think at all. Good thinking is hard work. If it were easy, everybody would be a good thinker." Unfortunately, many people try to live life the easy way. They don't want to do the hard work of thinking or pay the price of success. It's easier to do what other people do and hope that they thought it out. Look at the stock market recommendations of some experts. By the time they publish their picks, most are following a trend, not creating one or even riding its crest. The people who are going to make money on the stocks they recommend have already done so by the time the general public hears about it. When people blindly follow a trend, they're not doing their own thinking. 2. Popular thinking offers false hope. Benno Muller-Hill, a professor in the University of Cologne Genetics Department, tells how one morning in high school he stood last in a line of 40 students in the schoolyard. His physics teacher had set up a telescope so that his students could view a planet and its moons. The first student stepped up to the telescope. He looked through it, but when the teacher asked if he could see anything, the boy said no. His nearsightedness hampered his view. The teacher showed him how to adjust the focus, and the boy finally said he could see the planet and moons. One by one, the students stepped up to the telescope and saw what they were supposed to see. Finally, the second to last student looked into the telescope and announced that he could not see anything. "You idiot," shouted the teacher, "you have to adjust the lenses." The student tried, but he finally said, "I still can't see anything. It is all black." The teacher, disgusted, looked through the telescope himself, and then looked up with a strange expression. The lens cap still covered the telescope. None of the students had been able to see anything. 17. Many people look for safety and security in popular thinking. They figure that if a lot of people are doing something, then it must be right. It must be a good idea. If most people accept it, then it probably represents fairness, equality, compassion, and sensitivity, right? Not necessarily. Popular thinking said the Earth was the center of the universe, yet Copernicus studied the stars and planets and proved mathematically that the Earth and the other planets in our solar system revolved around the Sun. Popular thinking said surgery didn't require clean instruments, yet Joseph Lister studied the high death rates in hospitals and introduced antiseptic practices that immediately saved lives. Popular thinking said that women shouldn't have the right to vote, yet people like Emmeline Pankhurst and Susan B. Anthony fought for and won that right. Popular thinking put the Nazis into power in Germany, yet Hitler's regime murdered millions and nearly destroyed Europe. We must always remember there is a huge difference between acceptance and intelligence. People may say that there's safety in numbers, but that's not always true. Sometimes it's painfully obvious that popular thinking isn't good and right. Other times it's less evident. For example, consider the staggering number of people in the United States who have run up large amounts of debt on their credit cards. Anyone who is financially astute will tell you that's a bad idea. Yet millions follow right along with the popular thinking of buy now, pay later. And so they pay, and pay, and pay. Many promises of popular thinking ring hollow. Don't let them fool you. 3. Popular thinking is slow to embrace change. Popular thinking loves the status quo. It puts its confidence in the idea of the moment, and holds on to it with all its might. As a result, it resists change and dampens innovation. Donald M. Nelson, former president of the Society of Independent Motion Picture Producers, criticized popular thinking when he asserted, "We must discard the idea that past routine, past ways of doing things, are probably the best ways. On the contrary, we must assume that there is probably a better way to do almost everything. We must stop assuming that a thing which has never been done before probably cannot be done at all." 4. Popular thinking brings only average results. The bottom line? Popular thinking brings mediocre results. Here is popular thinking in a nutshell. Popular equals normal equals average. It's the least of the best and the best of the least. We limit our success when we adopt popular thinking. It represents putting in the least energy to just get by. You must reject common thinking if you want to accomplish uncommon results. How to question the acceptance of popular thinking. Popular thinking has often proved to be wrong and limiting. Questioning it isn't necessarily hard, once you cultivate the habit of doing so. The difficulty is in getting started. Begin by doing the following things. 1. Think before you follow. Many individuals follow others almost automatically. Sometimes they do so because they desire to take the path of least resistance. Other times they fear rejection. Or they believe there's wisdom in doing what everyone else does. But if you want to succeed, you need to think about what's best, not what's popular. Challenging popular thinking requires a willingness to be unpopular and go outside of the norm. Following the tragedy of September 11, 2001, for example, few people willingly chose to travel by plane. But that was the best time to travel. Crowds were down, security was up, and airlines were cutting prices. About a month after the tragedy, my wife, Margaret, and I heard that Broadway shows had lots of seats and many New York hotel rooms remained empty. Popular thinking said, stay away from New York. We used that as an opportunity. We got cheap plane tickets to the city, booked a room in a great hotel for about half price, and got tickets to the most sought-after show, The Producers. As we took our seats in the theater, we sat next to a woman beside herself with excitement. I can't believe I'm finally here, she said to us. I've waited so long. This is the best show on Broadway, and the hardest to get tickets to. Then she turned to look me in the eye and said, I've had my tickets for a year and a half, waiting to see this show. How long ago did you get yours? You won't like my answer, I replied. Oh, come on, she said. How long? I got mine 5 days ago, I answered. She looked at us in horror. By the way, she was right. It's one of the best shows we've seen in a while. And we got to see it only because we were willing to go against popular thinking when everyone else was staying at home. As you begin to think against the grain of popular thinking, remind yourself that unpopular thinking, even when resulting in success, is largely underrated, unrecognized, and misunderstood. Unpopular thinking contains the seeds of vision and opportunity. Unpopular thinking is required for all progress. The next time you feel ready to conform to popular thinking on an issue, stop and think. You may not want to create change for its own sake, but you certainly don't want to blindly follow just because you haven't thought about what's best. 2. Appreciate thinking different from your own. One of the ways to embrace innovation and change is to learn to appreciate how others think. To do that, you must continually expose yourself to people different from yourself. My brother, Larry Maxwell, a good businessman and an innovative thinker, continually challenges popular thinking by thinking differently. He says, most of our people in sales and middle management come from businesses with products and services different from ours. That constantly exposes us to new ways of thinking. We also discourage our people from active participation in formal business and trade associations and fraternities because their thinking is quite common. They don't need to spend lots of time thinking the way everyone else in the industry does. As you strive to challenge popular thinking, spend time with people with different backgrounds, education levels, professional experiences, personal interests, etc. You will think like the people with whom you spend the most time. If you spend time with people who think out of the box, you're more likely to challenge popular thinking and break new ground. 3. Continually question your own thinking. Let's face it, Anytime we find a way of thinking that works, one of our greatest temptations is to go back to it repeatedly, even if it no longer works well. The greatest enemy to tomorrow's success is sometimes today's success. My friend Andy Stanley recently taught a leadership lesson at INJOY's Catalyst conference called Challenging the Process. He described how progress must be preceded by change, and he pointed out many of the dynamics involved in questioning popular thinking. In an organization, he said, we should remember that every tradition was originally a good idea, and perhaps even revolutionary. But every tradition may not be a good idea for the future. In your organization, if you are involved in putting into place what currently exists, then it's likely that you will resist change, even change for the better. That's why it's important to challenge your own thinking. If you are too attached to your own thinking and how everything is done now, then nothing will change for the better. 4. Try new things in new ways. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Do you avoid taking risks or trying new things? One of the best ways to get out of the root of your own thinking is to innovate. You can do that in little, everyday ways. Drive to work a different way from normal. Order an unfamiliar dish at your favorite restaurant. Ask a different colleague to help you with a familiar project. Take yourself off of autopilot. Unpopular thinking asks questions and seeks options. In 1997, my 3 companies moved to Atlanta, Georgia. It's a great city, but traffic at peak times can get crazy. Immediately after moving here, I began looking for and testing alternative routes to desired destinations so that I would not be caught in traffic. From my house to the airport, for example, I have discovered and used 9 routes within 8 miles and 12 minutes from one another. Often I am amazed to see people sitting on the freeway when they could be moving forward on an alternative route. What is the problem? Too many people have not tried new things in new ways. It is true, most people are more satisfied with old problems than committed to finding new solutions. How you go about doing new things in new ways is not as important as making sure you do it. Besides, if you try to do new things in the same way that everyone else does, are you really going against popular thinking? Get out there and do something different today. 5. Get used to being uncomfortable. When it comes right down to it, popular thinking is comfortable. It's like an old recliner adjusted to all the owner's idiosyncrasies. The problem with most old recliners is that no one has looked at them lately. If so, they'd agree that it's time to get a new one. If you want to reject popular thinking in order to embrace achievement, you'll have to get used to being uncomfortable. If you embrace unpopular thinking and make decisions based upon what works best and what is right rather than what is commonly accepted, know this, in your early years you won't be as wrong as people think you are. In your later years, you won't be as right as people think you are. And all through the years, you will be better than you thought you could be. Thinking question. Am I consciously rejecting the limitations of common thinking in order to accomplish uncommon results? 9. Benefit from shared thinking. None of us is as smart as all of us. Ken Blanchard. Good thinkers, especially those who are also good leaders, understand the power of shared thinking. They know that when they value the thoughts and ideas of others, they receive the compounding results of shared thinking and accomplish more than they ever could on their own. Those who participate in shared thinking understand the following. 1. Shared thinking is faster than solo thinking. We live in a truly fast-paced world. To function at its current rate of speed, we can't go it alone. I think the generation of young men and women just entering the workforce sense that very strongly. Perhaps that is why they value community so highly and are more likely to work for a company they like than one that pays them well. Working with others is like giving yourself a shortcut. If you want to learn a new skill quickly, how do you do it? Do you go off by yourself and figure it out, or do you get someone to show you how? You can always learn more quickly from someone with experience, whether you are trying to learn how to use a new software package, develop your golf swing, or cook a new dish. 2. Shared thinking is more innovative than solo thinking. We tend to think of great thinkers and innovators as soloists, but the truth is that the greatest innovative thinking doesn't occur in a vacuum. Innovation results from collaboration. Albert Einstein once remarked, "Many times a day I realize how much my own outer and inner life is built upon the labors of my fellow men, both living and dead, and how earnestly I must exert myself in order to give in return as much as I have received." Shared thinking leads to greater innovation, whether you look at the work of researchers Marie and Pierre Curie, surrealists Louis Brunel and Salvador Dali, or songwriters John Lennon and Paul McCartney. If you combine your thoughts with the thoughts of others, you will come up with thoughts you've never had. 3. Shared thinking brings more maturity than solo thinking. As much as we would like to think that we know it all, each of us is probably painfully aware of our blind spots and areas of inexperience. When I first started out as a pastor, I had dreams and energy, but little experience. To try to overcome that, I attempted to get several high-profile pastors of growing churches to share their thinking with me. In the early 1970s, I wrote letters to the 10 most successful pastors in the country, offering them what was a huge amount of money to me at the time, $100, to meet me for an hour, so that I could ask them questions. When one said yes, I'd visit him. I didn't talk much, except to ask a few questions. I wasn't there to impress anyone or satisfy my ego. I was there to learn. I listened to everything he said, took careful notes, and absorbed everything I could. Those experiences changed my life. You've had experiences I haven't, and I've had experiences you haven't. Put us together and we bring a broader range of personal history, and therefore maturity, to the table. If you don't have the experience you need, hook up with someone who does. 4. Shared thinking is stronger than solo thinking. Philosopher-poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe said, "To accept good advice is but to increase one's own ability." Two heads are better than one, when they are thinking in the same direction. It's like harnessing two horses to pull a wagon. They are stronger pulling together than either is individually. But did you know that when they pull together, they can move more weight than the sum of what they can move individually? A synergy comes from working together. That same kind of energy comes into play when people think together. 5. Shared thinking returns greater value than solo thinking. Because shared thinking is stronger than solo thinking, it's obvious that it yields a higher return. That happens because of the compounding action of shared thinking. But it also offers other benefits. The personal return you receive from shared thinking and experiences can be great. Clarence Francis sums up the benefits in the following observation: "I sincerely believe that the word relationships is the key to the prospect of a decent world. It seems abundantly clear that every problem you will have, in your family, in your work, in our nation, or in this world, is essentially a matter of relationships, of interdependence." 6. Shared thinking is the only way to have great thinking. I believe that every great idea begins with 3 or 4 good ideas. And most good ideas come from shared thinking. Playwright Ben Jonson said, "He that is taught only by himself has a fool for a master." When I was in school, teachers put the emphasis on being right and on doing better than the other students, rarely on working together to come up with good answers. Yet all the answers improve when they make the best use of everyone's thinking. If we each have one thought, and together we have 2 thoughts, then we always have the potential for a great thought. How to encourage the participation of shared thinking? Some people naturally participate in shared thinking. Anytime they see a problem, they think, "Who do I know who can help with this?" Leaders tend to be that way. So do extroverts. However, you don't have to be either of those to benefit from shared thinking. Use the following steps to help you improve your ability to harness shared thinking. 1. Value the ideas of others. First, believe that the ideas of other people have value. If you don't, your hands will be tied. How do you know if you truly want input from others? Ask yourself these questions. Am I emotionally secure? People who lack confidence and worry about their status, position, or power tend to reject the ideas of others, protect their turf, and keep people at bay. It takes a secure person to consider others' ideas. Years ago, an emotionally insecure person took a key position on my board of directors. After a couple of meetings, it became obvious to the other board members that this individual would not positively contribute to the organization. I asked a seasoned leader on the board, "Why does this person always do and say things that hinder our progress?" I'll never forget his reply, "Hurting people hurt people." Do I place value on people? You won't value the ideas of a person if you don't value and respect the person himself or herself. Have you ever considered your conduct around people you value versus those you don't? Look at the differences. If I value people. If I don't value people. I want to spend time with them. I don't want to be around them. I listen to them. I neglect to listen. I want to help them. I don't offer them help. I am influenced by them. I ignore them. I respect them. I am indifferent. Do I value the interactive process? A wonderful synergy often occurs as the result of shared thinking. It can take you places you've never been. Publisher Malcolm Forbes asserted, "Listening to advice often accomplishes far more than heeding it." I must say, I didn't always value shared thinking. For many years, I tended to withdraw when I wanted to develop ideas. Only reluctantly did I work on ideas with others. When a colleague challenged me on this, I started to analyze my hesitancy. I realized that it went back to my college experience. Some days in the classroom I could tell that a teacher was unprepared to lecture and instead spent the class time asking us to give our uninformed opinions on a subject. Most of the time, the opinions seemed no better than mine. I had come to class so that the professor could teach me. I realized that the process of sharing ideas wasn't the problem. It was who was doing the talking. Shared thinking is only as good as the people doing the sharing. Since learning that lesson, I have embraced the interactive process, and now I believe it is one of my strengths. Still, I always think about whom I bring around the table for a shared thinking session. I'll tell you my guidelines for whom I invite later in this chapter. You must open yourself up to the idea of sharing ideas before you will engage in the process of shared thinking. 2. Move from competition to cooperation. Jeffrey J. Fox, author of How to Become CEO, says, "Always be on the lookout for ideas. Be completely indiscriminate as to the source. Get ideas from customers, children, competitors, other industries, or cab drivers. It doesn't matter who thought of an idea." 18. A person who values cooperation desires to complete the ideas of others, not compete with them. If someone asks you to share ideas, focus on helping the team, not getting ahead personally. And if you are the one who brings people together to share their thoughts, praise the idea more than the source of the idea. If the best idea always wins, rather than the person who offered it, then all will share their thoughts with greater enthusiasm. 3. Have an agenda when you meet. I enjoy spending time with certain people, whether we discuss ideas or not: my wife, Margaret, my children, my grandchildren, my parents. Though we often do discuss ideas, it doesn't bother me if we don't. We are family. When I spend time with nearly anyone else in my life, however, I have an agenda. I know what I want to accomplish. The more I respect the wisdom of the person, the more I listen. For example, when I meet with someone I'm mentoring, I let the person ask the questions, but I expect to do most of the talking. When I meet with someone who mentors me, I mostly keep my mouth shut. In other relationships, the give and take is more even. But no matter with whom I meet, I have a reason for getting together and I have an expectation for what I'll give to it and get from it. That's true whether it's for business or pleasure. 4. Get the right people around the table. To get anything of value out of shared thinking, you need to have people around who bring something to the table. As you prepare to ask people to participate in shared thinking, use the following criteria for the selection process. Choose people whose greatest desire is the success of the ideas. People who can add value to another's thoughts. People who can emotionally handle quick changes in the conversation. People who appreciate the strengths of others in areas where they are weak. People who understand their place of value at the table. People who place what is best for the team before themselves. People who can bring out the best thinking in the people around them. People who possess maturity, experience, and success in the issue under discussion. People who will take ownership and responsibility for decisions. People who will leave the table with a we attitude, not a me attitude. Too often we choose our brainstorming partners based on feelings of friendship or circumstances or convenience. But that doesn't help us to discover and create the ideas of the highest order. Who we invite to the table makes all the difference. 5. Compensate good thinkers and collaborators well. Successful organizations practice shared thinking. If you lead an organization, department, or team, then you can't afford to be without people who are good at shared thinking. As you recruit and hire, look for good thinkers who value others, have experience with the collaborative process, and are emotionally secure. Then pay them well and challenge them to use their thinking skills and share their ideas often. Nothing adds value like a lot of good thinkers putting their minds together. No matter what you are trying to accomplish, you can do it better with shared thinking. That is why I spend much of my life teaching leadership. Good leadership helps to put together the right people at the right time for the right purpose so that everybody wins. All it takes is the right people and a willingness to participate in shared thinking. Thinking question. Am I consistently including the heads of others to think, over my head, and achieve compounding results? 10. Practice unselfish thinking. We cannot hold a torch to light another's path without brightening our own. Ben Sweetland. So far in this book, we've discussed many kinds of thinking that can help you to achieve more. Each of them has the potential to make you more successful. Now I want to acquaint you with the kind of thinking with the potential to change your life in another way. It might even redefine how you view success. Unselfish thinking can often deliver a return greater than any other kind of thinking. Take a look at some of its benefits. 1. Unselfish thinking brings personal fulfillment. Few things in life bring greater personal rewards than helping others. Charles H. Burr believed, getters generally don't get happiness. Givers get it. Helping people brings great satisfaction. When you spend your day unselfishly serving others, at night you can lay down your head with no regrets and sleep soundly. In bringing out the best in people, Alan Loy McGuinness remarked, there is no more noble occupation in the world than to assist another human being, to help someone succeed. Even if you have spent much of your life pursuing selfish gain, it's never too late to have a change of heart. Even the most miserable person, like Charles Dickens's Scrooge, can turn his life around and make a difference for others. That's what Alfred Nobel did. When he saw his own obituary in the newspaper, his brother had died and the editor had written about the wrong Nobel, saying that the explosives his company produced had killed many people. Nobel vowed to promote peace and acknowledge contributions to humanity. That is how the Nobel Prizes came into being. 2. Unselfish thinking adds value to others. In 1904, Bessie Anderson Stanley wrote the following definition of success in Brown Book magazine. He has achieved success who has lived well, laughed often and loved much. Who has enjoyed the trust of pure women, the respect of intelligent men and the love of little children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task. Who has left the world better than he found it, whether by an improved copy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul. Who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who has always looked for the best in others and given them the best he had, whose life was an inspiration, whose memory a benediction. When you get outside of yourself and make a contribution to others, you really begin to live. 3. Unselfish thinking encourages other virtues. When you see a 4-year-old, you expect to observe selfishness. But when you see it in a 40-year-old, it's not very attractive, is it? Of all the qualities a person can pursue, unselfish thinking seems to make the biggest difference toward cultivating other virtues. I think that's because the ability to give unselfishly is so difficult. It goes against the grain of human nature. But if you can learn to think unselfishly and become a giver, then it becomes easier to develop many other virtues: gratitude, love, respect, patience, discipline, etc. 4. Unselfish thinking increases quality of life. The spirit of generosity created by unselfish thinking gives people an appreciation for life and an understanding of its higher values. Seeing those in need and giving to meet that need puts a lot of things into perspective. It increases the quality of life of the giver and the receiver. That's why I believe that there is no life as empty as the self-centered life. There is no life as centered as the self-empty life. If you want to improve your world, then focus your attention on helping others. 5. Unselfish thinking makes you part of something greater than yourself. Merck & Company, the global pharmaceutical corporation, has always seen itself as doing more than just producing products and making a profit. It desires to serve humanity. In the mid-1980s, the company developed a drug to cure river blindness, a disease that infects and causes blindness in millions of people, particularly in developing countries. While it was a good product, potential customers couldn't afford to buy it. So what did Merck do? It developed the drug anyway, and in 1987 announced that it would give the medicine free to anyone who needed it. As of 1998, the company had given more than 250 million tablets away. 19. George W. Merck says, "We try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It is not for the profits. The profits follow, and if we have remembered that, they have never failed to appear." The lesson to be learned? Simple. Instead of trying to be great, be part of something greater than yourself. 6. Unselfish thinking creates a legacy. Jack Balasek, President and Chief Operating Officer of True North Communications, says, "Learn, earn, return, these are the 3 phases of life. The first third should be devoted to education, the second third to building a career and making a living, and the last third to giving back to others, returning something in gratitude." Each state seems to be a preparation for the next one. If you are successful, it becomes possible for you to leave an inheritance for others. But if you desire to do more, to create a legacy, then you need to leave that in others. When you think unselfishly and invest in others, you gain the opportunity to create a legacy that will outlive you. How to experience the satisfaction of unselfish thinking? I think most people recognize the value of unselfish thinking, and most would even agree that it's an ability they would like to develop. Many people, however, are at a loss concerning how to change their thinking. To begin cultivating the ability to think unselfishly, I recommend that you do the following. 1. Put others first. The process begins with realizing that everything is not about you. That requires humility and a shift in focus. In The Power of Ethical Management, Ken Blanchard and Norman Vincent Peale wrote, People with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less. If you want to become less selfish in your thinking, then you need to stop thinking about your wants and begin focusing on others' needs. Paul the Apostle exhorted, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves." Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. 20. Make a mental and emotional commitment to look out for the interests of others. 2. Expose yourself to situations where people have needs. It's one thing to believe you are willing to give unselfishly. It's another to actually do it. To make the transition, you need to put yourself in a position where you can see people's needs and do something about it. The kind of giving you do isn't important at first. You can serve at your church, make donations to a food bank, volunteer professional services, or give to a charitable organization. The point is to learn how to give and to cultivate the habit of thinking like a giver. 3. Give quietly or anonymously. Once you have learned to give of yourself, then the next step is to learn to give when you cannot receive anything in return. It's almost always easier to give when you receive recognition for it than it is when no one is likely to know about it. The people who give in order to receive a lot of fanfare, however, have already received any reward they will get. There are spiritual, mental, and emotional benefits that come only to those who give anonymously. If you've never done it before, try it. 4. Invest in people intentionally. The highest level of unselfish thinking comes when you give of yourself to another person for that person's personal development or well-being. If you're married or a parent, you know this from personal experience. What does your spouse value most highly, money in the bank or your time freely given? What would small children really rather have from you, a toy or your undivided attention? The people who love you would rather have you than what you can give them. If you want to become the kind of person who invests in people, then consider others and their journey so that you can collaborate with them. Each relationship is like a partnership created for mutual benefit. As you go into any relationship, think about how you can invest in the other person so that it becomes a win-win situation. Here's how relationships most often play out. I win, you lose, I win only once. You win, I lose, you win only once. We both win, we win many times. We both lose, goodbye, partnership. The best relationships are win-win. Why don't more people go into relationships with that attitude? I'll tell you why. Most people want to make sure that they win first. Unselfish thinkers, on the other hand, go into a relationship and make sure that the other person wins first. And that makes all the difference. 5. Continually check your motives. François de la Rochefoucauld said, "What seems to be generosity is often no more than disguised ambition, which overlooks a small interest in order to secure a great one." The hardest thing for most people is fighting their natural tendency to put themselves first. That's why it's important to continually examine your motives to make sure you're not sliding backward into selfishness. Do you want to check your motives? Then follow the modeling of Benjamin Franklin. Every day, he asked himself 2 questions. When he got up in the morning, he would ask, "What good am I going to do today?" And before he went to bed, he would ask, "What good have I done today?" If you can answer those questions with selflessness and integrity, you can keep yourself on track. Give while you live. In the fall of 2001, we all witnessed a demonstration of unselfish thinking unlike anything we had seen in the United States for many years. Who can forget the events of September 11, 2001? I had just finished teaching a leadership lesson when my assistant, Linda Eggers, came into the studio to announce the tragic news. Like most Americans, I remained riveted to the television all day and heard the reports of the firefighters and police officers who raced into the World Trade Center towers to help others, never worrying about their own safety. In the days following the tragedy, millions of Americans expressed a great desire to do something that would help the situation. I had the same desire. My company was scheduled to do a training via simulcast on September 15, the Saturday following the tragedy. Our leadership team decided to add a 1.5-hour program titled, America Prays, to the end of the simulcast. In it, my friend Max Lucado wrote and read a prayer, expressing the heart's cry of millions. Franklin Graham prayed for our national leaders. Jim and Shirley Dobson gave advice to parents on how to help their children deal with the event. And Bruce Wilkinson and I asked the simulcast viewer to give financially to the people injured on September 11. Amazingly, they gave $5.9 million, which World Vision graciously agreed to distribute to those in need. Unselfish thinking and giving turned a very dark hour into one of light and hope. Less than 2 weeks after the tragedy, I was able to travel to Ground Zero in New York City. I went to view the site of the destruction, to thank the men and women clearing away the wreckage, and to pray for them. I can't really do justice to what I saw. I've traveled to New York dozens of times. It's one of my favorite places in the world. My wife and I had been up in the towers with our children many times before and have wonderful memories of that area. To look at the place where the buildings had once stood and to see nothing but rubble, dust, and twisted metal, it's simply indescribable. What many Americans didn't realize is that for many months people worked diligently to clean up the site. Many were New York City firefighters and other city workers. Others were volunteers. They worked around the clock, 7 days a week. And when they came across the remains of someone in the rubble, they called for silence and reverently carried them out. Since I am a clergyman, I was asked to wear a clerical collar upon entering the area. As I walked around, many workers saw the collar and asked me to pray for them. It was a humbling privilege. American educator Horace Mann said, "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." According to this standard, New York City's firefighters are certainly prepared for death. The service they perform is often truly heroic. You and I may never be required to lay down our lives for others, as they did. But we can give to others in different ways. We can be unselfish thinkers who put others first and add value to their lives. We can work with them so that they go farther than they thought possible. Thinking question. Am I continually considering others and their journey in order to think with maximum collaboration? 11. Rely on bottom line thinking. There ain't no rules around here. We're trying to accomplish something. Thomas Edison, inventor. How do you figure out the bottom line for your organization, business, department, team, or group? In many businesses, the bottom line is literally the bottom line. Profit determines whether you are succeeding. But dollars should not always be the primary measure of success. Would you measure the ultimate success of your family by how much money you had at the end of the month or year? And if you run a non-profit or volunteer organization, how would you know whether you were performing at your highest potential? How do you think bottom line in that situation? A non-profit's bottom line. Frances Hesselbein had to ask herself exactly that question in 1976, when she became the National Executive Director of the Girl Scouts of America. When she first got involved with the Girl Scouts, running the organization was the last thing she expected. She and her husband, John, were partners in Hesselbein Studios, a small family business that filmed television commercials and promotional films. She wrote the scripts and he made the films. In the early 1950s, she was recruited as a volunteer troop leader at the Second Presbyterian Church in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Even that was unusual, since she had a son and no daughters. But she agreed to do it on a temporary basis. She must have loved it, because she led the troop for 9 years. In time, she became council president and a member of the national board. Then she served as executive director of the Taylor's Rock Girl Scout Council, a full-time paid position. By the time she took the job as CEO of the national organization, the Girl Scouts was in trouble. The organization lacked direction, teenage girls were losing interest in scouting, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to recruit adult volunteers, especially with greater numbers of women entering the workforce. Meanwhile, the Boy Scouts was considering opening itself to girls. Hesselbein desperately needed to bring the organization back to the bottom line. We kept asking ourselves very simple questions, she says. What is our business? Who is our customer? And what does the customer consider value? If you're the Girl Scouts, IBM, or AT&T, you have to manage for a mission. 21 Hesselbein's focus on mission enabled her to identify the Girl Scouts' bottom line. We really are here for one reason: to help a girl reach her highest potential. More than any one thing, that made the difference. Because when you are clear about your mission, corporate goals and operating objectives flow from it. 22. Once she figured out her bottom line, she was able to create a strategy to try to achieve it. She started by reorganizing the national staff. Then she created a planning system to be used by each of the 350 regional councils. And she introduced management training to the organization. Hesselbein didn't restrict herself to changes in leadership and organization. In the 1960s and 70s, the country had changed and so had its girls, but the Girl Scouts hadn't. Hesselbein tackled that issue, too. The organization made its activities more relevant to the current culture, giving greater opportunities for use of computers, for example, rather than hosting a party. She also sought out minority participation, created bilingual materials, and reached out to low-income households. If helping girls reach their highest potential was the group's bottom line, then why not be more aggressive helping girls who traditionally have fewer opportunities? The strategy worked beautifully. Minority participation in the Girl Scouts tripled. In 1990, Hesselbein left the Girl Scouts after making it a first-class organization. She went on to become the founding president and CEO of the Peter F. Drucker Foundation for Nonprofit Management, and now serves as chairman of its board of governors. And in 1998, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Clinton said of Hesselbein during the ceremony at the White House, "She has shared her remarkable recipe for inclusion and excellence with countless organizations whose bottom line is measured not in dollars, but in changed lives." 23 He couldn't have said it better. Why you should enjoy the return of bottom line thinking. If you are accustomed to thinking of the bottom line only as it relates to financial matters, then you may be missing some things crucial to you and your organization. Instead, think of the bottom line as the end, the takeaway, the desired result. Every activity has its own unique bottom line. If you have a job, your work has a bottom line. If you serve in your church, your activity has a bottom line. So does your effort as a parent, or spouse, if you are one. As you explore the concept of bottom line thinking, recognize that it can help you in many ways. 1. Bottom line thinking provides great clarity. What's the difference between bowling and work? When bowling, it takes only 3 seconds to know how you've done. That's one reason people love sports so much. There's no waiting and no guessing about the outcome. Bottom line thinking makes it possible for you to measure outcomes more quickly and easily. It gives you a benchmark by which to measure activity. It can be used as a focused way of ensuring that all your little activities are purposeful and line up to achieve a larger goal. 2. Bottom line thinking helps you assess every situation. When you know your bottom line, it becomes much easier to know how you are doing in any given area. When Frances Hesselbein began running the Girl Scouts, for example, she measured everything against the organization's goal of helping a girl reach her highest potential, from the organization's management structure, which she changed from a hierarchy to a hub, down to what badges the girls could earn. There's no better measurement tool than the bottom line. 3. Bottom line thinking helps you make the best decisions. Decisions become much easier when you know your bottom line. When the Girl Scouts were struggling in the 1970s, outside organizations tried to convince its members to become women's rights activists or door-to-door canvassers. But under Hesselbein, it became easy for the Girl Scouts to say no. It knew its bottom line, and it wanted to pursue its goals with focus and fervency. 4. Bottom line thinking generates high morale. When you know the bottom line and you go after it, you greatly increase your odds of winning. And nothing generates high morale like winning. How do you describe sports teams that win the championship, or company divisions that achieve their goals, or volunteers who achieve their mission? They're excited. Hitting the target feels exhilarating. And you can hit it only if you know what it is. 5. Bottom line thinking ensures your future. If you want to be successful tomorrow, you need to think bottom line today. That's what Frances Hesselbein did, and she turned the Girl Scouts around. Look at any successful, lasting company, and you'll find leaders who know their bottom line. They make their decisions, allocate their resources, hire their people, and structure their organization to achieve that bottom line. How to enjoy the return of bottom line thinking. It isn't hard to see the value of the bottom line. Most people would agree that bottom line thinking has a high return. But learning how to be a bottom line thinker can be challenging. 1. Identify the real bottom line. The process of bottom line thinking begins with knowing what you're really going after. It can be as lofty as the big picture vision, mission, or purpose of an organization. Or it can be as focused as what you want to accomplish on a particular project. What's important is that you be as specific as possible. If your goal is for something as vague as success, you will have a painfully difficult time trying to harness bottom line thinking to achieve it. The first step is to set aside your wants. Get to the results you're really looking for, the true essence of the goal. Set aside any emotions that may cloud your judgment and remove any politics that may influence your perception. What are you really trying to achieve? When you strip away all the things that don't really matter, what are you compelled to achieve? What must occur? What is acceptable? That is the real bottom line. 2. Make the bottom line the point. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone whose intentions seem other than stated? Sometimes the situation reflects intentional deception. But it can also occur when the person doesn't know his own bottom line. The same thing happens in companies. Sometimes, for example, an idealistically stated mission and the real bottom line don't jibe. Purpose and profits compete. Earlier, I quoted George W. Merck, who stated, "We try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It is not for the profits. The profits follow, and if we have remembered that, they have never failed to appear." He probably made that statement to remind those in his organization that profits serve purpose, they don't compete with it. If making a profit were the real bottom line, and helping people merely provided the means for achieving it, then the company would suffer. Its attention would be divided, and it would neither help people as well as it could nor make as much profit as it desired. 3. Create a strategic plan to achieve the bottom line. Bottom line thinking achieves results. Therefore, it naturally follows that any plans that flow out of such thinking must tie directly to the bottom line, and there can be only one, not two or three. Once the bottom line has been determined, a strategy must be created to achieve it. In organizations, that often means identifying the core elements or functions that must operate properly to achieve the bottom line. This is the leader's responsibility. The important thing is that when the bottom line of each activity is achieved, then the bottom line is achieved. If the sum of the smaller goals doesn't add up to the real bottom line, then either your strategy is flawed or you've not identified your real bottom line. 4. Align team members with the bottom line. Once you have your strategy in place, make sure your people line up with your strategy. Ideally, all team members should know the big goal, as well as their individual role in achieving it. They need to know their personal bottom line and how that works to achieve the organization's bottom line. 5. Stick with one system and monitor results continually. Dave Sutherland, a friend and former president of one of my companies, believes that some organizations get into trouble by trying to mix systems. He maintains that many kinds of systems can be successful, but mixing different systems or continually changing from one to another leads to failure. Dave says, bottom line thinking cannot be a one-time thing. It has to be built into the system of working and relating and achieving. You can't just tune into the desired result every now and then. Achieving with bottom line thinking must be a way of life, or it will send conflicting messages. I am a bottom line thinker. It is a part of my system for achievement. I practice it every day. No other measurements, no wasted efforts. Dave used to call members of his field team every night to ask the bottom line question they expect to hear. He continually kept his eye on the company's bottom line by monitoring it for every core area. When it comes right down to it, regardless of your bottom line, you can improve it with good thinking. And bottom line thinking has a great return because it helps to turn your ideas into results. Like no other kind of mental processing, it can help you to reap the full potential of your thinking and achieve whatever you desire. Thinking question. Am I staying focused on the bottom line so that I can gain the maximum return and reap the full potential of my thinking? One final thought. I trust you have enjoyed this book. As you move forward, I wish you success and suggest that you keep in mind. 1. Everything begins with a thought. Life consists of what a man is thinking about all day. Ralph Waldo Emerson. 2. What we think determines who we are. Who we are determines what we do. The actions of men are the best interpreters of their thoughts. John Locke. 3. Our thoughts determine our destiny. Our destiny determines our legacy. You are today where your thoughts have brought you. You will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. James Allen. 4. People who go to the top think differently than others. Nothing limits achievement like small thinking. Nothing expands possibilities like unleashed thinking. William Arthur Ward. 5. We can change the way we think. Whatever things are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, are of good report. If there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, think on these things.